Sorry for having to record such a low quality video today, but I just kind of don't want to dig out my phone, and I just kind of want to use my webcam today. I was actually just taking a shower, and I was thinking, I tend to do a lot of thinking in the shower, and I was thinking about the Four Noble Truths, and I was thinking about, I was sort of explaining them to myself, and I got hooked up a little bit. But I ended up sort of reconciling with them a little bit. So I was going over the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, that you are a sentient being, and that sentient beings exist. There are beings that exist that suffer, things that suffer, especially on our planet. And so, because of who I am and who you are, we will suffer. And then the origin of suffering. Suffering comes from, I think, just generally two things. The first thing is pain, sensations that are a result of your body, and the result of that sensations exist, and there can be painful ones. So there's the first origin of suffering. And then there's the more major origin of suffering, which is wanting. You don't want to die. You don't want to feel pain, and that's why it's sort of a more important origin than just pain, because somebody, I think, can experience pain, and it is not wanting that pain that is ultimately what is causing suffering. Not getting what you want, things like that. And that all comes from having predispositions, from having preferences about things. And then there is the truth of the cessation of suffering. And this one I've always gotten hooked up on a little bit, because if you think about it, how can you get rid of all your wanting? And how can you get rid of all your pain? Now, maybe that's what Nirvana is actually being able to have pain happening to you, and you not wanting it to go away. You accept the pain. But for me, I would say that that's suffering. So that I always tend to get hooked up there, because where I get hooked up is with rebirth. Because no matter what, you are going to be reborn as something. You are going to disintegrate. Your body is going to change. Everything is going to change. And essentially you are going to morph into something else. But the Buddhist concept, way of thinking, is that there is a loud car outside. He's revving his engine really loud. Essentially, there's no you to disintegrate. You are everything. Everything is one thing, and so that one thing, which Buddhists call the true self, is going to, a part of it is going to, which is you, what you would call you, going to change, and your body is going to become, going to sit in a casket, or whatever it's going to do. You're going to change, but you're not going to die. But the way that Buddhists, or the way that I've sort of understood Buddhism a little bit, is that if you can get rid of your wanting, and you can get rid of your beliefs, your preferences, your dispositions, you can free yourself from a rebirth. as a human that feels pain again. Now that's where I get hooked up, because even if I get rid of my wanting, and I get rid of my desires, and I get rid of my, ultimately what you could do is kill yourself. And you could end all your suffering, because you would no longer be a human. You would be something that doesn't experience pain. But that's if you think of yourself as a body, as a human, and that's who you are. I would say that no, that you don't end your suffering if you kill yourself. Because there are other people and other beings out there that can still experience pain, and they are all a part of you. It's like we're all one body. You always hear at church, they talk about the body of Christ, and everybody being a body of that. And sort of, you can think of it the same way, is that we're all the body of the Buddha, including Jesus, and including everyone from every religion, even those without. And so you still suffer, even if you were to end your body, because somebody else suffers, something else suffers. And so really, if you think of it that way, as long as we keep making babies, we can't end our suffering. But then I was thinking about rebirth. And I was thinking about what the Buddha said about rebirth. And the way I see it is that once you realize that you are not you, and I think that may be the biggest thing in Buddhism that I've learned, and that has made sense of Buddhist concepts and Buddhist thinking the most to me, is always going back to that. Once you realize that you are not you, and that even if you kill yourself, you're still going to suffer, because other people suffer, and they're a part of you, one body, that you realize that you don't die. You realize that there is no birth. You aren't just human. And I think that the subtle thinking of a person that knows that they don't die, that knows that they're not born, they don't come from nothing, they're created out of everything, by everything, composed of everything. Somebody who thinks like that, I think, is enlightened, has reached Nirvana, and is not going to be reborn, and is not going to experience suffering. But it's the last part that I don't necessarily agree with. The last part of my statement, that you're not going to experience suffering. That's not true. The majority of what you are everything, and that people don't understand. They think of everything, and maybe you think of the planet, or maybe you think of a universe, this little picture in your head. But your true nature is a very vast object, very vast thing. Much of it doesn't suffer like we do, that we know of. But we suffer. And so, as long as humans exist, and sentient beings exist, suffering will exist. But since you know that you aren't going to be reborn as just a human, then you realize that you're not just human. And I just think that that's what the Buddha was talking about, that's Nirvana. And it's so subtle. It's just a subtle change of thought, of thinking that you are going to die, and you're going to end, and that your suffering is going to end. Because you think of yourself as a person. Maybe you just wake up and you're somebody else, because you are them, and you suffer. I don't know. But then you go to the thinking of realizing that you are not just you, that you are connected to everything, and you are one very vast object, you are one very big thing, that you realize you don't die, you're not reborn. You realize that there's no you to suffer. You're not a victim. You're not a victim of suffering, because there's no you to be victimized. Suffering is just a part of a very abstract, a very relative part of who you really are. And you're just growing, I guess it's just growing up and seeing that as a human. Because when you think you're going to die, you still think of yourself as you, and so you're gonna wake up, and at some point you're going to be a sentient being. Suffering is going to be a part of, and see, it's just that kind of thinking. It's such a very subtle difference in thinking, and it's funny that we're caught up in thinking that we're going to die, and then we're going to become something, and then we're going to not suffer, and then we are going to suffer. When really, you're a very, very vast object that suffers partly. Not just you, your friends, your strangers that you meet, a bug on the ground, they all suffer, and you're all a part of them, and you're all a part of things that don't suffer. The air, a cloud in the sky, they don't suffer, and that's part of you too. And so I think that Nirvana and being enlightened is just a slight, subtle change of thought. It's so subtle, it's so tiny. Yeah, it's very hard to cross over to that side, and I think that that's what Buddhism is, the practice is about being able to move that side. Because even though I can say that being enlightened is that very small change of thought, I still get caught up in thinking that I'm me, and that when I die, I'm going to go somewhere, and then that place I might go might be another human being, and then I might suffer. It's just getting rid of that conditioned thought that you need to get rid of. So I was just having that thought, and I thought I would share it. And I'm going to go to bed. So good night, Internet, and talk to you later.